Hello, Durud and Shalom. Guys, look who I have with me. I have Emily Schrader. Schrader, do I pronounce it right? Schrader, right?
Schrader,
Schrader.
yeah.
Schrader, fantastic. Guys, Emily is back here. Emily is one of my heroes. I'm so excited to have her here. Hi, Emily.
Hello, Darude. How are you all? I'm very, very happy to be here.
Oh, thank you so much for agreeing. I it's shocking that you say accept my invitation because you're so big now. So I feel like I'm talking to a celebrity. I'm like, oh my gosh, she accepted to come
That's
on my show.
not
What an honor.
true. That's not true. I will tell you, there's been a few of my events where people like came to both, Jewish community and Iranian community, but people came and they were like, "Oh, I saw you on Atheist Republic." More than
No way.
once. Yeah.
No
So
way.
you have
Really?
fans too. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Well, for the few people in the chat that might not know, and shame on you if you don't know Emily, okay? But for the few people who don't know who you are, can you actually introduce yourself to them and the work that you do
Yeah, so
to
I'm
people?
Emily
Yeah.
Schrader. I'm an Israeli American journalist. I focus primarily on Middle East, but in particular Iran. And in addition to my journalism, I'm at JNS and Ynet and also ILTV. I wear many hats. I also am a big activist for what will soon be, let's hope, a free Iran. So I've been very active on that front for many years now. I'm originally from Los Angeles, but now I'm based here in Tel Aviv.
And you have a new book. Can we see your
I
book?
do, I do. I'm using new liberally because a few months ago it came out. But yes, I do have a new
Right.
book. It's 10 things every Jew should know before they go to college. Now, the title might be misleading because it's not just for Jews; it's for everyone. But it's all about. We break down the conflict going on, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and how people are using that to promote other forms of hatred and anti-Semitism on campuses, but we really break down like what the core issues are in the conflict. So we talk about like the rise of Hamas. We talk about the role of the Islamic Republic, the neighborhood of the Middle East, the bias of the UN. So we go into like details about all of these things. And my favorite thing about it is that a lot of times these books about, especially about the Middle East and about history, are long and boring with a lot of words, and you can only digest a little bit at a time. So we set out like a specific goal to make it all like bite-sized information. So you see how like each topic, we have drawings as well. Each topic is like
Nice.
one small section and you can skip around. You don't have to read it like from start to finish because it has like different sections for each topic and you can just refer to them and flip back. Like, oh, you want to know about areas A, B, and C of the West Bank. You can flip to that section and read the overview. And also, what's important is that it's not my opinion. This isn't something that I'm saying this is the right way. I'm presenting both sides of all of the arguments. So, like, if you oppose settlements or you
Wow.
support settlements, it doesn't really matter. I wrote why someone does and why someone doesn't. It's not my personal
Wow.
opinion. It's about the different perspectives and what you might hear. Because, like, when I went to university, I didn't know all of these details at first. And
Right.
people will throw them at you as if they do know, when oftentimes they don't at all. So I felt it was important to sort of break down the things that people look at and think, oh my God, that's so complex. And when you actually look at the fact and the history of it, it's maybe not that complex, but you need it broken down to kind of understand.
Wow, that's such an amazing resource.
Yeah, I have to
Fantastic.
send you
I'm gonna
one.
actually.
I have to send you a
Yeah,
signed
okay.
copy.
That would be amazing. Okay, thank
Yeah.
you. Um, and also, by the way, can you, for people who might not know, can you explain to them why are you also so interested and focused on the Iran issue and the liberation of Iran?
Yeah, so believe it or not, I'm not Iranian. I know, I look super
Yeah.
Iranian, blonde hair, everything. No, I'm kidding. I'm originally from LA, also known as Tehrangeles. And
Yeah.
I always was around a very large Iranian community. And I actually didn't
Mm.
really see them as as different in terms of the overall goal, because everyone I knew, whether they were Jewish Iranians or non-Jewish Iranians, were very against the Islamic Republic. Many of them fled the regime, and that's why they were in LA and had to rebuild their entire lives. And so I never saw the fight against the Islamic Republic as being honestly any different than the fight against terrorism that has plagued the Jewish community for so long when it comes to fighting against, various proxies of the Islamic regime and others as well historically. But today, unfortunately, we're talking about the proxies of the regime.
Right. And do you agree that the key to solving all of these problems are in Tehran? Like, this is, if we basically get rid of the Islamic Republic problem, basically almost many of these other problems would uh, almost get solved. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the one step that nobody seems to want to do. Like they're willing
Mm,
to have all these wars all throughout the Middle East, but they don't just want to bite the bullet and actually take out the Islamic Republic, or at least their leadership, because really the only people who can take
yeah.
back the Islamic Republic are the people. But
Mm,
we can't help, we can't take out the leadership. And I think Israel did a pretty
yeah.
good job of that in June. But unfortunately, that's not quite enough, at least not yet, for an actual regime change on the ground. And there's a number of different reasons for that.
Yeah.
I'm sure we can talk about it more. But yeah, I think that you're not going to see a long-term peace in the Middle East until you see a regime change in Iran. I think that all roads right now lead to Tehran, and people are not paying attention to that in the West because they don't understand the impact of the Islamic Republic on the entire region, also on the entire
Mm,
world. But for my daily life, on the region, and you see all these Western actors trying to involve themselves in peace agreements and negotiations and all different kinds of things on Gaza, on Lebanon, on also on Iran, and they don't really understand what's happening in the Middle East. They don't really understand who these different groups are or why it's problematic. And I think a great example of that is that we heard President Trump say shortly after the Gaza ceasefire was announced, he went to his conference with many of the Arab states in Sharm el Sheikh in Egypt, and he said something about how, they said it couldn't be done. And I've solved 3,000 years of conflicts, referring to conflicts between Arabs and Jews in this particular territory. Obviously,
right.
that's not the case. We see already Hamas is pledging all over the place that they're not going to demilitarize, they're not going to disarm, that they insist on having a role in the future leadership of Gaza. So a lot of it is talk. It's nonsense. It's not actually reflective of what's happening on the ground. And the fact that you would even say that when so clearly Hamas, a proxy of the Islamic regime, which is still standing, agreed to the first phase of a ceasefire, it's pretty disingenuous, I would say. And
Yeah.
also it's very misleading because it leads people to believe that something has been achieved when you haven't demanded the accountability from those who we actually need to demand accountability from, be it Hamas or the Islamic regime in Iran.
Yeah. And with regards to the 12-day war, my impression is that we were so close to get to the toppling of the Islamic Republic, because if the 12-day war was the ended up being the 13-day war, Israel was basically was moving on to targeting the threats to the Iranian people, because they managed to neutralize a lot of the threat to Israelis, and they were now moving to the political leaders and oppression forces, riot control forces, and stuff like that, and maybe also Khamenei. And my impression is that America got in the way. I mean, Trump, he himself admitted, he came out, said that Khamenei would have been dead if it wasn't because of me. And I think Israel was basically almost was this close to basically solving all our problems, and Trump got in the way. Is that your impression as well?
Yes, that's also my impression, and I've spoken about it quite openly. I have a lot of problems with the approach of the Trump administration since they got in to Iran. And that started with Steve Witkoff, the envoy who led the negotiations for the American side. I think he's a lovely person. I think he's done tremendous
Yeah.
work to ensure the release of the last, 20 living hostages that were taken by Hamas. And I think he genuinely cares and has good intentions. I really I respect him for this. I think he's a great person. However, He does not understand the Middle East. He does not understand from what he says publicly. He does not understand the Islamic regime in Iran. I'm not sure that he understands the full picture when it comes to Hamas and Gaza. I'm not even sure that he understands the full picture when it comes to Ukraine and Russia. This is a talented, highly intelligent businessman with no
Right.
experience in any of these conflicts, which is why you see him continuously making mistakes when he speaks about them in interviews. He at first during the nuclear negotiation, said that the line that they're demanding from the regime in Iran was 3.67 uranium enrichment. Well, 3.67 is the JCPOA. That is the previous Iran deal. So him even
Right.
saying that demonstrates that he doesn't know what he's doing. And the regime, I mean, the one thing that they do well is negotiate. They're very good at that. They're very good at lying, at putting on a front. And to have someone who just appears, even if he's not, but appears clueless is highly problematic. And then you saw during the war, in my opinion, it seems that Trump was far more concerned with being able to say that he ended something or say that he made some kind of agreement than what the actual reality was. And that's the pattern that we've seen throughout this second term of Trump so far. And that's very concerning because when it comes to these conflicts in the Middle East, if you don't actually deal with them and you continue kicking the can down the road, more people are going to die. And that's very, as someone who actually lives in this region and has to deal with the consequences of it, I very much resent the way that it's been approached and the way that it's been handled and is being handled.
Yeah, I mean, I watched a 60-minute interview that they did, and I was really, um, really angry because there was these Americans come here in the Middle East and they don't understand the Middle East and they talk as if they could lecture down to us. And based on the things that they say, it's completely obvious that they're completely clueless, right? I mean, they don't even understand. They don't seem to understand that Hamas and the Islamic Republic, they use negotiations to buy time so that they could recover and so that they could attack another day. And this is something that all of us understand, and they seem to not. And also, I really got angry because Witkoff at some point was sympathizing with the Hamas leader over the fact that he lost his son. I'm like, oh
Yep.
my, I lost my son, you lost your son, and then he was basically sympathizing with the person that was part of the people that planned October 7th. Or like, how Witkoff, his son deserved to die. Your son didn't deserve to die. You should, instead of sympathizing, be like, oh, at that moment I didn't see him as a terrorist. I saw him as another human being. Like, what are you talking about? He's a terrorist. You should have told him, like, I'm glad that your son died, and we're going to come after you one day as well. Your fate is the same as your son. Like my like, how are you putting your son and his son in the same like, it was so insane, and they were both citing it all the time,
But
like
that's
as
what
if
I'm saying.
Israel
I
and
think
Hamas. Yeah.
I think it's coming
Go.
from a place like of good intentions, but he doesn't understand. Like he doesn't understand even why that's so problematic or why that's so offensive. I remember in a previous interview, he also said that, they told us that the Hamas terrorists were immovable in their positions, that they are ideologically motivated, and that's like what they're set in, and they're not going to change their ways. But that's not true. Yes, it is. They're an Islamist terrorist organization at its foundation. What started with the Muslim Brotherhood is now being funded and aided and trained by the Islamic Republic of Iran. They have always been a terrorist organization that seeks the complete destruction of the state of Israel and a genocide against the Jewish people. And they've been very clear about that. And I don't understand why Witkoff has continued in the media. I understand people say all kinds of things in negotiations. I don't understand why the US administration continues to put this idea forward that Hamas is some sort of reasonable actor that we can just, I don't know, buy off or otherwise convince to give up their ambitions of genocide. And it's the same tactic that we've seen him take and the administration take towards the Islamic Republic. Trump still thinks that he's going to make a deal with the regime. And he may, which would
Right.
be disastrous for everyone involved. But he
Mm.
shouldn't. He shouldn't even be trying because you can't make deals with people who do the kinds of things that they do. It doesn't solve anything. It's not because I'm against it or I don't want, I want a war or something like that. Absolutely not. It's because it doesn't work. It's appeasement. And even if you see it as a success, they see it as appeasement. Just like you said, they're doing it to buy time. Any deal that exists, they're doing it to buy time.
I think these business people don't understand that these groups are living in a completely different world. They don't, their goals are different from us. They live in a parallel universe, and they're not you try to use the prosperity and trade and stability and peace carrot as if that's what they're after, and they think like, oh my god, you guys are so naive, we're going to pretend that's what we're after. But that's not even because with everyone else that you're like, that's the same thing with Putin. Like other countries, even dictators, they want more trade, they want more prosperity, they want more economic activity. Putin wants to bring the glory of the Soviet Union empire back. The Islamic Republic wants to build an Shia empire. Hamas is basically looking for a kingdom up in the heavens somewhere, right? So they are working for something else completely, and that's why the same tools that you use to negotiate with other people doesn't work with them, and that's what they don't understand. They treat them the same. But Israel understands. So here's what let me know if you agree with me. Is every time, this is why I'm so pissed off with this with the terms of this peace deal, because every time Israel, under pressure of international community, did appeasement negotiations and talking and negotiating with terrorists, it backfired. When they evacuated Gaza, it got worse. When they did Oslo, the terrorist activity became worse. Every time Israel managed to achieve long-lasting peace, it was not because of agreements and signing papers and stuff. It was because it actually destroyed the fighting capability of its enemies. Like it got long-lasting peace with Jordan and Egypt because it crushed its enemies. So I don't know why we don't learn from history and just repeat the things that made Israel bring long-lasting peace like before. Why are we repeating these mistakes? I mean, do you see it that way that I just described, or
Yeah, I mean, I think the one exception would be the Abraham Accords. However, I would caveat that with the fact that the reason that these Arab states agreed to join the Abraham Accords, and the reason that they were willing to recognize, the right of the state of Israel to exist, whereas previously they had no diplomatic relations, is that first off, they weren't at war with Israel, and hadn't been, and second, it benefited them as a nation more than not having peace with Israel. We see that there was massive, expansion and trade with some of the more moderate Gulf states. In after the Abraham Accords, there was also, a huge benefit from the United States for making those peace agreements for those Arab countries. And I also think beyond that, they've accepted that Israel is not going anywhere and that Israel is in a position of strength regionally. And that was something that previously hadn't been acknowledged. Listen, if it didn't benefit them, they never would have made peace with Israel. It's because they saw that Israel is here to stay. And because even if they weren't fighting a war against Israel, they know that they wouldn't win one. So if they can't destroy the state of Israel, the next best thing is to make friends because that's what's in their benefit. So even though I disagree with you on the technicalities of it, in principle, you're actually right. Even with the Abraham Accords, it is more advantageous for Israel whenever they are negotiating or fighting from a position of strength. Why people don't allow Israel to win wars, that's a whole other issue that we could probably spend 24 hours speaking about. But I think one of the biggest threats that we've seen in the past 2 years is the disinformation efforts. A lot of that spearheaded by the Islamic regime in Iran. It's the abuse of free speech and media and social media to promote knowingly incorrect narratives about what's happening on the ground, spreading fake information and fake news to fuel outrage and anti Semitism against Jewish communities, and also, of course, first and foremost, the state of Israel. We've been hearing about how there was a genocide in Gaza from literally October 8th. So how could there have been a genocide in Gaza when the IDF didn't even enter Gaza after October 7th until October 27th? That's when the operations began. They were protesting against Israel before October 7th had even ended on that day itself. So it tells you that there's
well,
something more going on than just whatever the facts are of a war. War is always terrible. There are awful things that happen in war. A lot of people died in Gaza that are also civilians. But does that mean it's not a justified war or that those are war crimes because there were civilian casualties? No. And it certainly doesn't mean that there was a genocide. Also, another example, ethnic cleansing. cleansing. We've heard a lot about ethnic cleansing on social media and mainstream media. Ethnic cleansing, their base for this claim is that the IDF would send out notices telling Palestinians to leave northern Gaza or to leave southern Gaza at different points of the war or to leave areas where there was fighting. These are not, notifications for ethnic cleansing. They're not telling them leave the area because you can never come back. And if you don't believe that, then just look at how Israel did the exact same thing in Yemen, in Iran, and in Lebanon. And strangely enough, we weren't accused of ethnic cleansing there. Yet, time after time after time, we're accused of ethnic cleansing in Gaza, despite the fact that our goal, or the IDF's goal in these specific operations, is to get the civilians out of harm's way. Why is it that, almost 5 million people in Tehran can evacuate the city to get out of harm's way and then return to the city after the conflict has ended? And no one accuses Israel of ethnically cleansing Tehran. But when it comes to Gazans, all of a sudden it's all over media and social media how Israel wants to ethnically cleanse the Palestinians. Like every effort it seems that Israel took to try to assist and remedy the plight of the Gazans who actually are not involved in conflict, it was almost like it made it worse for the state of Israel. Like no matter what Israel does, it's always wrong. They bring in more aid, it's wrong. Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, they're against it. Like what is your solution? Because they're not interested in solutions, and they're not interested in what's actually best for Palestinian people, the Palestinian people, and their future and their safety. They're interested in continuing the war and using the deaths of Palestinians as a cudgel against the state of Israel in the international arena. That's it.
Yeah, that's why I think the Palestinian cause is actually the greatest curse upon the people in Gaza, because they're so heavily invested in their blood and tears that they want more of it so that they could keep their movement alive. Regarding the Abrahamic Accords, so maybe I think actually that goes in line with what I was saying, because the reason why those Arab countries are agreeing, were basically eager to get into the Abrahamic Accords, was because Israel previously destroyed every single chance of them destroying Israel, and showed that you cannot that Israel is basically the strongest player in the region, and there's no way to destroy it. So you better play nice. Like there's no other way. This Israel's here to stay, and it's stronger than all of you combined. So I think that when I say, like, I'm not saying I'm against deals completely. Obviously, once you demonstrated that I'm strong and you can't get rid of me, at that point, when they bend the knee, then obviously you do as many deals as you want with them. I'm in favor of Abrahamic Accord. But first, if they mean you harm at the point that they're trying to attack you, that's not when you do deals with them. When they are attacking you, when they mean to harm your citizens, then you crush them. Once they give up on that dream, yeah, sure, do as many deals as you possibly can with it. That's the way. What do you think about the Qatar bombing? Because a lot of people are, even some people who sympathize with Israel, were accusing Bibi that was the wrong thing to do. I think that's the reason why we have the hostages now. Do you condemn the Qatar bombing? Because I don't.
No, of course not.
No, okay.
Listen,
Yeah.
Qatar is a disgusting Islamist regime that puts on pretty clothes and spends a lot of money. And that's why they get away with a lot of what they get away with. They are the funders of the state-sponsored mouthpiece of Hamas, Al Jazeera. They have caused countless problems across the Arab world, even for other Gulf countries with their support for terrorism. They've allowed Hamas to use Qatar as a base for years. The conduct of the Qatari regime for many years has been very blatant, and for some reason right now the Trump administration is going around pretending as if that's not the case and sticking their head in the sand. And I think you can make peace with people you disagree with. You can even make deals with people you disagree with without pretending that they aren't doing the things that they very clearly have been doing, which is another criticism that I have, especially as of late, of the Trump administration. And let's not forget that, when it comes to Witkoff and also, unfortunately, Jared Kushner, they both have multi-million-dollar deals that they're currently, involved with in Qatar. Like that is very clearly a conflict of interest. Now, that doesn't mean that good things can't come from it. It doesn't mean that they can't have a fruitful negotiation. It doesn't mean that they shouldn't apply pressure. I think they should have a long time ago to Qatar. But the fact that after the strike on Qatar by Israel, all of a sudden Qatar can come to an agreement to force Hamas to release the remaining living hostages all at once. I don't know if you remember, but previously Hamas had refused to do that. They only wanted, a few here and a few there because they view those human beings who they've been torturing for 738 days at the time they were released as bargaining chips. And that's disgusting. And it's not something that the United States ever should have permitted in any capacity. And the United States, unlike Israel, had the ability, both, under Biden and under Trump from day one, to force Qatar's hand. We have a military base there. Like it's crazy that this wasn't done before. And the fact that only after the Israeli strike on Qatar was Qatar like, okay, fine, I think
Mm.
that tells you a lot. Obviously, we don't know all the details. We don't know what happened behind the scenes. I know people who have argued the exact opposite, that the deal happened in spite of the strike, not because of it. However, I don't agree with that assessment. I would say, based on all available knowledge, which admittedly I don't have everything, but based on what we do know, it seems that that the strike on Qatar by Israel is sort of what pushed Qatar to find, okay, this isn't going to work. This isn't sustainable. We're going to have to find another solution.
Which also shows that they could have done this from the beginning, and they had the pressure on Hamas, and they didn't, which that
That's
also,
right.
which is disgusting.
Well,
Yeah.
of course, they didn't have the
Um.
pressure on Hamas. They had an office for Hamas inside of Qatar. And
Yeah.
let's not forget, lest anyone be confused when it comes to Qatar, that their target isn't just the state of Israel or even the global Jewish community. They've been pouring billions of dollars into American academic institutions and the UK
Yeah.
in order to change public opinion, to present a narrative that is false, to promote Islamist Muslim Brotherhood ideology from, elementary school onwards. And this isn't something that we should accept. It's a subversion operation to undermine Western countries.
Right. Do you? So the way I view this, and let me know if you agree, is that the Americans are now getting credit for all the efforts that Israel has done to get Hamas to the point that they're desperate enough to release the hostages, and Trump is getting all the credit, even though it was the IDF soldiers that bled for us to get to the moment that this is even possible. Hamas was so desperate because they knew that they were basically on the edge of complete destruction, so that they came to United States to save them, and United States actually managed to save Hamas from complete destruction. But everybody is praising Trump for bringing a peace deal, and it's not, I don't see it as a peace deal. I think it's insane that people call it a peace deal. The war didn't pause for 1 second. But I celebrate the part that the hostages were released, and I think Israel and the IDF especially deserve all the credit for that. I don't know, understand why Trump is getting all the credit. And also, when it comes to the so-called peace deal, I think there's three options that we could have had: a peace deal, a ceasefire. It's not a peace deal. It was a ceasefire agreement, but it should have been a surrender argument. So it is what people call it is a peace deal. What it actually is a ceasefire deal. But what it should have been, it was a surrender deal. So let me know if you agree or disagree with any of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a pretty good assessment of the situation. Obviously, the vision for the ceasefire deal was that phase one would be a ceasefire agreement, as you stated, and that
Mm.
part I do agree with. However, it came about, I do agree with it. But the phase two is the part where they're talking about a peace deal, and this is something that Hamas has flat out rejected. And from day one, it was problematic because Trump said that they have to take the deal as is or leave it, and then announced to everyone that they had taken the deal. While at the same time, Hamas was saying, we didn't, we're not going to demilitarize. But it
Yeah.
seems like President Trump doesn't pay much attention to reality. He just sort of paints his own picture of what he wants things to be and declares that it is so, and lets
Yeah.
everyone else deal with the cleanup of that. And it's very problematic because, as I said,
Yeah.
a few minutes ago, that the price that's paid for those kind of decisions is paid in blood here. not in the United States. It's paid with IDF soldiers. It's paid with victims of terror, and that is what's going to continue to happen if we don't actually be honest about what's happening. And in this case, to let Israel do their job, to let Israel defend its civilians, to let Israel eliminate Hamas and ensure that they cannot, return to leadership, to let Israel take out the supreme leader and his son in the Islamic Republic of Iran, to let Israel do what they need to do. And
Mm.
that's not really happening. It's happening, I think, probably better than we would have seen under a Kamala Harris presidency. And, I'm grateful for the support that the United States has provided for the IDF and the state of Israel. There's no question that Trump has been very supportive of Israel, but is he what he's claiming he is? No. No, and it doesn't do us any favors to pretend otherwise. And Israel is not the 51st state, contrary to what some might think. And it's a sovereign nation that should be making its own decisions. And I feel like that's been a little bit undermined in some ways, at least with the statements in terms of the public perception. And I don't think that that's good, frankly, for either side.
Okay, but even in Israel, when Witkoff came and gave a speech in Tel Aviv, we saw people in Tel Aviv cheering Trump and saying thank you, Trump. And then when every time they mentioned Netanyahu, the whole crowd seemed to be booing Netanyahu. I mean, I'm not an Israeli, and I feel like sometimes I maybe should. Shouldn't be telling Israeli as an Iranian. I shouldn't be telling Israelis how to do their politics, right? So sorry if this comes as like, let me know if I should shut my mouth or not. But I think like even if you don't like Netanyahu, when it comes to foreign policy, you should show a united front. Like this is an internal fight that you're having. But when it comes to dealing with Americans or the Qataris or the Saudis or anyone else, then you should be united. You should be showing a united front. You shouldn't be booing your own prime minister in front of Americans. I don't know. Did you think that was the right thing to do? But people in the Tel Aviv were booing Netanyahu.
No, it was super, super inappropriate, and I'm not a supporter. I think it was super,
Mm.
super inappropriate behavior, and also it was pretty widely condemned. There were a lot of people on the left and right who were like, "That is so not appropriate." There are some people who are involved with that group that were previously involved in the protests against Netanyahu over the judicial reform prior to October 7th, who are very much focused on Netanyahu as a very divisive figure in Israel.
Mm.
And I think that was the reason you saw some of that behavior. That being said, no, it's definitely not acceptable. And I think sometimes, as the only democracy in the Middle East, I think sometimes Israelis forget how things might be perceived outside of Israel. And so, as a result of that, you sometimes see things like this within Israel. But that being said, he is the prime minister, and I think he does deserve credit for his role in securing the release of the remaining living hostages. And it wasn't appropriate at all to boo him. The thing that really struck me, though, was that they cheered for Trump and they cheered for Qatar, but they didn't cheer for
Yeah.
Bibi. They booed Bibi. So that should tell you, at least the people booing, how much they know about what's going on in the big picture in this region. So disappointing.
Right. Also, help me understand the things that people don't like about BB, because I don't know, like I think about like I know I'm simplifying this, but a whole bunch of cigars and champagne, like that doesn't seem like a big deal to me. But and maybe the newspaper stuff, that seems like a bigger deal. But and also I understand that I criticized him before October 7th regarding the money that went to Hamas, but I mean, his intention was not to. I mean, I still condemn. I still don't like it, but the intention was not to. I mean, even the Americans were on, like, when you were, the whole plan was to get activity higher in Gaza as well. Like they were issuing work visas. If you want to deal with anything in Gaza, you have to go through Hamas anyway. So I don't know if again, I'm not saying he did obviously in hindsight we could see that was a horrible idea, like we predicted it would be a horrible idea, but it wasn't like he was trying to make a terrorist group grow. Like, I don't know. Do you think it's a lot of these criticism are fair, unfair, or fair but exaggerated? Because as an Israeli, you are more familiar with this. And then I know you have limited time, so after this, I'm going to ask about the Haaretz article. So this is the second to last question.
Okay. So I think that most of the criticism that I'm hearing is more legitimate because it's, well, it's happening in Hebrew and it's things that are concerning domestic issues. And there are very many very valid questions when it comes to, the prime minister and his decisions over the past years and when he's been in leadership. But I will say that a lot of what we're seeing from abroad or what we're seeing in English about Netanyahu is very much exaggerated and conspiratorial. And I think that's something that has sort of characterized, especially the issue with Gaza. I've seen people claiming that Netanyahu did it on purpose in order to maintain power, or that, Netanyahu's the one who created Hamas. And there's all kinds of they'll take some story that happened once, 20 years ago, like you said, the securing cash from Qatar to Hamas and also the work visas, things like this. They'll take something that happened and then they'll build a narrative around it to suit their agenda. And there's no one better at this than the Islamic Republic of Iran. But that's what we're seeing online. The idea that Netanyahu, knew what was going to happen on October 7th, or that he somehow allowed it to happen in order to advance himself politically is absurd. First and foremost, because it harmed him politically. I mean, he was wildly unpopular after, and people still want answers. They want a commission to investigate what happened on October 7th. But that's not what you would think if you saw it on, X or other social media platforms, because they're just so exaggerated and conspiratorial about every single thing that happens in Israel. I will give you another example that's often used by anti-Israel bad faith actors, especially on social media. A very long time ago, when there was a large wave of Ethiopian Jews immigrating to Israel, there was an incident in which some of the women who did not speak Hebrew or English, so they didn't really understand, were asked if they wanted birth control shots. Some of them said yes. It's unclear to this day if they understood, if they understood at the time what that was, or they understood what that meant. But Haaretz, which I know we'll talk about in a minute, ran a story about how this happened, and that the medical field should have been more responsible, and all these things. That's true. But what's not true is that Israel forcibly sterilized Ethiopian women. And yet, until today, that's what you hear from people who, want to present a certain perspective or narrative about the state of Israel. So, like I said, they'll take something that there's some sort of something that happened, but it's not even remotely close to what the conspiracy becomes. And then the conspiracy is what's repeated ad nauseum across media and social media. And it's very dangerous. This is how you incite against a people or against a country, like we've seen in the past 2 years.
Okay, that was fantastic. So I know we're running really short out of time, and some
It's
super
okay.
chats
It's
were
okay.
praising
I
this.
have a little. It's okay.
Okay. So then let's go to this video. Hold on, where is this?
Oh, they love me.
Yes. So let's actually play this first.
Okay.
It's time to have a conversation with your Amus and Khalez who are posting Emily Schrader videos attacking NIAC in 2023. New reports by Haaretz and Citizen Lab have blown the lid off of the Israeli disinformation war on Iranians. How they're using bots, sock puppet accounts, paid influencers, and artificial intelligence online to promote war, to promote the son of the deposed Shah, to try to trick ordinary Iranians into becoming cannon fodder once the bombs start dropping. And this information war didn't start this past June. It has been used against us here in the United States extensively. According to social forensics, during the Women Life Freedom movement, Israel's government had its fingerprints all over the campaign of attacks and smears against NIAC and anyone who opposed war, which is most of our community. So think about it. The Israeli government, already occupying and bombing one population, teamed up with remnants of Iran's old regime to smear people working for peace and organic change as agents of the current one, all in the name of bombing Iranians. Many people fell for it, and that's okay, but now it's time to wake up. By manufacturing consent and silencing dissent in our community, this disinformation war doesn't just make it easier to push war on Iran. It weakens us at home at a time we need to be most strong to fight for our rights. Look at the ICE detentions, the travel bans, the increasing discrimination. We need to be stronger than ever. Now, NIAC is still here today because through all these attacks, ordinary people kept showing up, meeting their lawmakers, donating, making their voices heard.
We know who gave them money.
And in the end, that's who makes real change. Not disinformation, not online trolls, but real people. So give your friends and family a call. Send them the Haaretz link. Post it to your Telegram group. Israel is waging a disinformation war against Iranians and Iranian Americans. And only we, together, can wake up and stand up for ourselves.
Wow.
I love it. Oh
So,
my God.
Explain yourself.
Him and Sina Tusi and Trita Parsi, they love me. They're obsessed with me. Like once a week, they tweet about me, how I'm this evil puppeteer, this evil Jewess puppeteer who's trying to control the narrative. Me, one person. That's great. I'm a fan. I love that for like more than 2 years or more, I guess more than 3 years now. NIAC has been obsessed with me. Like they are literally sharing a screenshot of the video that I made more than 3 years ago. That's what we call success. But no, really, I mean, the claims made, of course, are ridiculous. And it's also really ironic that it's coming from them and they're talking about, oh, the fake bots and AI and the campaign again on social media to manipulate opinion when like this is exactly what the Islamic Republic not only has done, but is doing right now. Like if you look at my Twitter and you see the responses of all these accounts that's like, you know, Sam678 with a bunch of random numbers and they're like, no, it's not true. In Iran, women are allowed to remove hijab now. Like what? What? Obviously, you're a fake account. You were created like 3 weeks ago, and you've only responded to my posts. Like, could you be more obvious? So it's insane. It's insane, and I love that they reference the. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I got excited.
No, go ahead. No. I thought no. Go ahead. Go ahead. This is great.
So I was going to say that the Haaretz article is that, you know, they referenced is based on a report that I read every word of, which doesn't say anything at all whatsoever about the Crown Prince, Reza Pahlavi, or about restoring monarchy in Iran or anything like that. What it talks about is that
the Haaretz article does say that their sources that they use, which is Citizen Lab, that's the source doesn't mention Prince Reza Pahlavi.
I read the Citizen Lab report. It doesn't it's not about Reza Pahlavi. It's a pretty fair analysis the way that they did it. However, the evidence just isn't there to make the conclusions that they make, I would argue, and furthermore, the claims that Haaretz makes. Now, Haaretz took a report and made it a conspiracy about Netanyahu's government because they don't like Netanyahu. That is why they focused on Gila Gamliel, the Minister of Intelligence, who oversaw the visit and invited the Crown Prince to Israel previously. There was nothing about this in the Citizen Labs report at all. And their evidence for, you know, a supposed AI or, you know, artificially orchestrated campaign on this topic referenced 40 to 50 accounts on X. Okay, 40 to 50 accounts on X. And which they admittedly in the Citizen Lab report said they weren't very influential accounts. Like it ranged from, you know, nothing, several hundred impressions to maximum, I believe it was tens of thousands. So how is that an influence operation when you're talking about 40 to 50 accounts? Not to mention the fact that as someone who actually owns a digital marketing company that does these kinds of analysis, the idea that a state-sponsored campaign, okay, a state influence operation would be operating only 40 accounts is ridiculous. Like it's absolutely, if that's the case, Israel is the worst in the world at like these covert influence operations because it doesn't even make sense. Now they did have some evidence that is interesting. For example, they found that about half of the usernames that were created for these platforms, I'm sorry, not usernames, registration emails, all had the same registration domain. But that doesn't mean that it was Israel. It doesn't mean it was any state actor. It means that there is some evidence that it was a coordinated campaign. But why or from whom, we don't really have that information. It could be Israel. And the writers of that report found that it would be likely that it's Israel because they believe that the messaging benefited Israel's position. But that's not an argument because correlation doesn't equal causation. So the fact that people were sharing, even the fact that people were sharing fake things, they referenced one fake video during the 12-day war of the bombing of the gates of Evin prison. So they claimed that this was AI, but there was also evidence of other video footage of this happening. So there's fake videos all the time. There's fake videos of almost every conflict that exists on Earth today and everything else as well. So how that relates to Israel is a bit more problematic, even for the Citizen Lab report.
Yeah, so let's separate them. Citizen Lab did an investigation. Haaretz took that report and they straight up lied. Like their sources, they used the Citizen Lab report as a source to claim things that the Citizen Lab was not even talking about. Like none of those 50 accounts was actually supporting Prince Reza Pahlavi. So how did they got Prince Reza Pahlavi out of this? I don't know. It's a mystery. Unless they just straight up lied. But this
I think some of the content. Some of the content that they referred to in the Citizen Lab report, they said was supporting overthrowing the Islamic Republic. I believe there was one instance of content that said, the graffiti in Iran, something about the return of the Crown Prince. But those were like the only references. And in text, like of the text of the actual report, you don't see anything about Reza Pahlavi. It had nothing to do with Reza Pahlavi.
And one of the accounts was support. Yeah, and one of the accounts was supporting Khamenei. One of those accounts was even supporting Khamenei. But the Citizen Lab report, I mean, it sounds really deep and sophisticated, but the Israel connection is still like, I don't. Since you own a digital company, this is my understanding. On social media, every time a movement gets popular, there are some people that are using bots to just gain followers by jumping on the bandwagon. It doesn't even have to be. It doesn't even have to be any states. It doesn't even have to be a political agenda. It just, whatever is trending. It could be a celebrity. It could be a political movement. As soon as there's the trend happens, they use AI to replicate what other people are saying to just gain followers, because it's an investment in accounts with followers. That's what they're doing. So, and it's very sophisticated, and a lot of people doing that. And given that this happens all the time in every trend, I don't understand why this should. They didn't show us any proof that this is Israel. And also, the AI video is strange because they're like, oh, the explosion of Evin with a prison. This is an AI video, and it seems very sophisticated. So this must be, I don't know, a state actor. I like. Sora could do that for you in 5 minutes. Like what you upload a picture of Evin prison and say like make it explode. 5 minutes later, you have an AI video with the door exploding. Like that doesn't take a state to do that. Every one of us could do that. Like I don't know. It seems a bizarre conclusion that they made there.
Yeah, I that's also was my impression. I think there's some things that indicate that those group of accounts were working together. It may have even been the same person. There's no evidence that I saw, even in what they reported, that it was a state actor or even that it was an organized like opposition group or something like that, or an NGO or anything like that. So I don't know how they got from like, here's some evidence that equals this. What they claimed didn't support the conclusion, and then Haaretz took the conclusion and made it even more extreme and made it more of a conspiracy. So it is problematic. The one thing I think that does point to the argument that it could possibly have been involved somehow with Israel is that they said that video, at least some of the accounts that they perceived to be the leaders of this content they were allegedly pushing, shared some of this within minutes or perhaps even several minutes before Evin prison had actually been bombed, which would indicate that they had some sort of knowledge. Yeah, that's possible. It's also possible, and I know because I was talking about it, that other people were talking about hitting key regime sites in order to demoralize the Islamic Republic, and to show support for the people of Iran at the same time that had been, going on for many days and hours prior to that. So just because someone did that at a certain time doesn't automatically mean, oh, it's a conspiracy of the state of Israel. And if it was highly ineffective. It didn't actually do anything. So the whole premise, it seemed like they wanted to blame Israel for something. And
Right.
so they were looking selectively for evidence that would support that. But then, Haaretz took it to a whole new level because they're obsessed with Netanyahu. And
Uh,
the thing that made me so mad was how it endangered other political dissidents inside Iran.
Yes. Yes, you're right. And Emily, hours before the attack, so many Iranian analysts were talking about attack and who would be hit. We were talking about our shows about we had so many shows before the attacks about, okay, the attacks are coming. What is Israel going to hit? Like, I had my list of
Well,
predictions. So many other people.
I spoke about attacking IRIB. I spoke about that the day before, the weeks before,
Right.
why it would be important, why it's a legitimate target and not actual media. And then it happened. Does that mean that I knew? Of course not.
Yeah. Murad, there's this analyst, Murad Vaisi, was live talking about the list of things that he thought Israel was going to hit. And while he was live talking about it, the attack started happening. While he was live going through the list of things that, so I don't know, this the analysis just seems like by the way, doesn't all of this show that they're afraid of Prince Reza Pahlavi, because it seemed like he's a main. I mean, I tell a lot of Israelis, like, look, the enemies of Israel are also the enemies of Prince Reza Pahlavi. That should show you that Prince Reza Pahlavi is a good person to support. Like, Israelis should support Prince Reza Pahlavi, given that all the people that are anti-Israeli seem to also be anti-Prince Reza Pahlavi. Do you agree with that? Do you think that it's good for Israelis to support Prince Reza Pahlavi?
I mean, I think it's not up to the Israeli government or Israelis to say. I think there is a lot of support for the crown prince here in Israel. I think there is a lot of support from the government as well, and I think that's a good thing. But at the end of the day, like, I can't speak for the people in Iran and what they're going to choose. And I actually think that the crown prince would agree with me on that. He's never tried to overstep that I've seen. Even when I've interviewed him, he has always advocated for what the people will ask for, what the people will demand, whether of him or from someone else. So in that regard, I support him, but like, I'm not Iranian, so I can't say like, yes, he should be
But
this
that's
or
not
he should.
No, but that's not speaking for the Iranian people. The Iranian people love to see Israelis support Prince Reza Pahlavi because it gives him international legitimacy. Like, we need that. We need Prince Reza Pahlavi to have more international legitimacy. So we support Israelis, especially because Israelis seem to understand Iranians more than anyone else, because we have like Americans are an ocean away. Like, Iranians and Israelis are more aligned than any two other nations. I think, like, we have mutual interests, we have mutual values, we have mutual enemies, and
But I think that's why
we
you've seen
welcome.
such support for, like, from
Yeah,
Minister Gamliel and from all of the Israeli government. It's why you've seen such support for Reza Pahlavi and not for any other opposition figure the same way. I mean, then that is the reason. And also historically, Israel had very good relations prior to 1979 with Iran.
yeah.
And historically, even before that, of course, the partnership between Jews and Iranians is long-standing for thousands of years. So it makes sense, and I'm glad that Israel has been outspoken about this at a government
Mm.
policy level. That being said, the key to regime change in Iran isn't going to come from Israel. First, it has to come from the people, but beyond that, we
Yeah.
have to see Western support, not in terms of like bombing, but we have to see support, at least in word, in mouth, of a regime change in Iran, and we're not seeing that. That doesn't mean that the United States has to go in and treat it as if it was Iraq or something. And that's what Americans don't understand. That if the president
Mm.
comes forward and says, "Yeah, I would endorse a regime change in Iran because that's the people's demand and has been for many years," He seems to think, or some of his supporters seem to think, that that would mean war. That's not what it means. Iranians are not Arabs. It's not the same thing. It's not the same history. And there isn't an acknowledgement of that from European leadership, certainly not in a united way. There's a few leaders here or there. We need to see the heads of state supporting this. We need to see them having serious meetings with Reza Pahlavi about this, and developing plans to empower the people of Iran. And, I actually spoke to the Israeli ambassador to Israel, U.S. ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, about this, and asked, like, well, is there a plan? Like, what are you doing? You're saying, oh, well, President Trump cares about the Iranian people. How? Is he figuring out a way to ensure that they have internet? Is he applying pressure on whatever allies we do have that can pressure Tehran to stop the persecution of protesters, or the persecution of women, or any of the things that are going on in Iran? I could spend an entire hour just on that. He's not doing anything that we see. Maybe there are things being done covertly, which I sure hope so, because if nothing is actually being done, then this is a true shame and an embarrassment. As an American, I would be embarrassed by that. But he doesn't really have answers. There is no, at least, transparent plan to actively empower the Iranian people in one way or another. Another way, they could have strike funds to support the, the workers who go on strike in key industries. This can also help bring down the regime. Prince Reza Pahlavi has a whole platform for people who want to dissent from the Islamic Republic, who are in the military forces or otherwise in the government. And he has thousands of people that have signed up for this already. Why aren't they working with U.S. government on this, or perhaps even with specific European governments on this? Are they being emboldened? Is the Crown Prince being emboldened by these world leaders? And if not, why not? He should be. He should, even if he's not going to be the leader of Iran, he should be, because he cares about the people of Iran and he wants to see a better future for them, which is more than I can say for these European and Canadian and American leaders when it comes to what's happening now.
Right. I mean, oh, by the way, Prince Reza Pahlavi doesn't. His whole movement is not about coming and becoming the leader of Iran. He wants to be the leader of the interim period, and then after that, he wants to give the decision to the Iranian people to decide whatever government. He doesn't want to become king or the leader unless the Iranian people make him the leader, right? After we have a government. But
which is why, by the way, sorry, I just have to say this about Haaretz, which is why the article from Haaretz was so outrageous, because they're presenting it as if it's some sort of regressive movement to enforce a monarchy and place a king. Israel is going to place a king in Iran, and that's never been the discussion. So even to frame the article that way shows such an ignorance of Iran and of the Israel-Iran relationship and of the history and what the dialogue is surrounding this issue today. It's just so irresponsible, and it's infuriating, and I think they should be legally held accountable.
Yeah, I mean, I've been talking to a lawyer, some of the people, and they told me that it's hard to do a legal, because they talk about Iranians, them as a group rather than individuals. So that lawyer told me that it's difficult to make a legal case, but they said that they could write a letter. Well, I'm talking to a lawyer, see what we could do, an Israeli lawyer. With regards to, yes, the Iranian people are the people that needs to decide. It's their decision, and all of that is true. Okay. But we need help. It is up to the Iranian people, but we cannot do this by ourselves because we're not armed. The Islamic Republic is armed. We are not armed. If you look at successful revolutions in history, most of them had foreign support. The American Revolution had French support. Okay, we have nothing. We have nothing. We don't even have handguns, right? So it's like, oh, the Iranian people have to decide. But we tried. We tried so many times. And the Islamic Republic crushed us.
The Iranian people have to decide what type of government they're going to have, what type of leader they're going to have, and who that leader is. I agree with you completely that to overthrow the Islamic Republic requires help.
Yes, okay.
Doesn't necessarily have to be military, but that helps. That helps. There are a lot. It's much, especially when you don't have a united front. Like if all of Europe and all of the North America was united in supporting regime change and taking concrete steps that were not war, possibly. Okay, possibly it could happen. If they said we're going to cut off the Islamic Republic, we're going to take down diplomatic relations between Europe and the Islamic Republic, there is a way I believe they could do it without anyone getting killed. But I don't see that happening. So when it comes to actually overthrowing the Islamic Republic, I think it's very clear that the people need help. That the people need help in a variety of ways, and I hope that, and it's something I've advocated for a long time, that the leadership in Europe and the United States and elsewhere, anywhere else that can help, understand this about what's happening on the ground, and based on the comments and actions of the Trump administration, and I hope I'm wrong. I would be delighted to be wrong, but I don't think that they understand.
Yeah, and I think some military is going to be required, whether from Israel. And I'm not talking about invasion or troops on the ground. I'm just talking about strategic strikes, just like Israel is doing, and taking out some of the main leaders. Hopefully Khamenei at some point, and even
I
Rouhani,
also
even
think
better.
this might be like it might sound a little crazy or aggressive, but when it comes to the protest movements inside of Iran, like if people go out to the streets in the tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands, I genuinely believe that the United States should be coordinated with them, not because they're orchestrating it, but because I think that, Trump loves to say crazy things. Okay.
Mm.
What is the problem if Trump hypothetically would say the Iranian people are protesting because they want regime change? And the second that anything happens to any of these protesters at the hands of the IRGC on the ground, we are going to bomb those forces from above. You know what I mean? Like, he says these crazy things all the time, and he demands that certain countries do certain things. He specifically warned Hamas, for example, about the slaughter of Palestinians that we've seen in recent weeks, whom they call collaborators, and told them not to do that itself would be a violation of the ceasefire. Why can't he apply pressure to the Islamic Republic the same way in defense of the people of Iran? No one is defending the people of Iran. It doesn't mean they have to start a war, but the people should be allowed to go out and demonstrate, and they should not be facing bullets or getting their eyes shot out or getting kidnapped and taken to prison where they get executed.
I don't think Trump would follow. Trump says these things, but he never follows through. I trust Israel more than
we follow
Israel.
through here in Israel.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, every time you do. That's why Iranians are more and more realizing that their main ally is Israel and not the United States. And also another thing, so Israel, when it comes to last thing, and then I'll read 4 super chats and then I'll let you go. But other than Israel doing the military strikes that it does beautifully, better than anyone else ever, even better than the United States. Okay. Other than that, I just want to encourage Israelis, just individual Israelis, like to just study Prince Reza Pahlavi, know him and support him. Okay. If I think that means a lot for us Iranians, and if more Israelis support Prince Reza Pahlavi in Israel, I think that will translate to also government policy changes, because Israel is a democracy. And I think other than military support, when it comes to doing things on the ground and supporting movements and supporting all the things that you listed, Prince Reza Pahlavi and his team have figured all of that out. They have a very, very, very advanced, sophisticated, educated team that they have came up with plans, very detailed plans. I don't know if you've seen them. They're amazing. We've gone through them. I think this is the most planned interim period before a revolution actually ever happens in history. And these people know what they're talking about, and they have a plan for everything, and they're going about it in such a strategic way. And it has made anybody who wants to support the Iranian people, it has made their job easy. You don't even have to figure everything else, because they have figured it out. All you have to do is just support him and his team and his plan. That's all you need to do, because everything else has been figured out by that team. So that's what I want to, especially, I mean, everybody, Americans, Europeans, Canadians, everyone else, if supporting Prince Reza Pahlavi means a lot to us Iranian people, but especially Israelis. Okay, just figure out who he is and why he's worth supporting, and why his team. Oh, by the way, one thing to make everybody more give you every Israelis incentives to support Prince Reza Pahlavi. If you go and read the booklet, the emergency plan for the interim period after the first 100 day after the Islamic Republic falls. If you go to the foreign policy section, you can see one of their highest priorities for week 1 is the recognition of the state of Israel. It's one of imagine that's the week 1 priority. Like this is like the regime has fallen. This is one of the first things that they want to do, and that's how you know Prince Reza Pahlavi is on Israel's side and his team is on Israel's side.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah. All right. So let me just quickly read the super chats because I know I took too much of your time. Sorry. Yoav is saying, Armin, you're a huge man. Okay, I'm gonna hit the jungle gym. Okay, well, you motivated me to ninja mode. Okay, well, thank you for the compliment. And good, yeah, you go do that. Nora is saying, so happy to see Emily here again. Can't stay for long, but glad you hosted her AR. Yes,
well, you know what that means. That means I have to come back again.
Yes, please. Oh my God, that guy, you heard that? She promised me. Okay, that's fantastic. Okay, you can't take that back. You promised in front of everybody. Okay.
All right, I'll do it.
Okay. Marjan saying, love to see Emily here. Thank you, Marjan. And Poran is saying, lovely Emily. And Unusual is saying, Emily and Armin is a fantastic collab. Great to see. Well, thank you guys. That's very sweet. Thank you guys for all of that. And thank you again, Emily. This was fantastic.
Of course, it was great. We'll do it again.
Okay, sounds good. All right.
All
Bye.
right. Bye.
Bye. Okay, let me just end the stream. 1 second.